Yo, what is up, guys? It's the Nightwing and Way of Life Esports coming at you guys with another League of Legends video here today. This is talking about the World's 2020 semifinals thoughts and opinions. Sorry I didn't have this video come out a little bit more earlier. I was actually insanely busy. The 2020 offseason has been insane. Jensen getting a $4 million contract, Alfari going to Team Liquid, Otawamne is now joining Rogue. Perks could be playing for Fnatic, and he's been the face of G2 since 2016. Just obviously, it's going to be a crazy 2020 offseason. But, let's talk about the semifinals that just took place, and then we'll talk about the finals afterwards. So, the most interesting match, obviously, was Suning versus Top. So, let's actually start with that one because most people are going to want us to talk about G2 versus Damwon, and that's the one where we just basically just shit on G2. And it hurts my feelings when people shit on G2, but it's like they played really bad. But okay. So top esports versus Suning. There's a lot of mistakes I saw in the Suning series, but the issue here with Suning is that they played up against Top, and Top in that series specifically, they didn't really do much. Like Jackie Love playing really, really aggressive, showing tendencies he had already not shown for a while. Yu Yanji basically just running it down. Knight underperforming. Then you also had 369 also underperforming. Karsa not really having the same series he had against Selfmade in the previous series against Fnatic. The whole of Top Esports was genuinely underwhelming at this 2020 Worlds event. I think a lot of people came in with a lot of expectations, but it just personally depends on how you really want to perceive their tournament run. Some can see it as good because they made top four. Some can see it as underwhelming. I mean, they should have been in the finals. So most people already predicted it was going to be China versus the LCK anyway. It was going to be LPL versus LCK, Top Esports versus Damwon. Well, you got half that prediction right. It was good. Now it's just Suning versus Damwon in the finals. But what do you think about Suning versus Top, actually? Oh my god.
Yeah, no. I think the big Suning versus Top. You want to start on that one first?
Yeah.
I think the big thing about Suning versus Top was the fact, first of all, there was a massive amount of underperformance on the enemy side. I don't usually like to chalking up victories to the enemy's underperformance always is kind of unfortunate. But I think that the fact that they did moderately well against Suning in a series where you think that Knight actually never came online. This is like considerably, arguably, like the best mid laner in the world, never fully able to deal a consistent amount of damage in comparison to what Angel was able to do. I mean, he really never brought to the table what Angel was able to do, and it wasn't like they were counterpicked for the most part. It was just, we saw a lot of whiffed flash ults, if you saw in game 5, game 4, with Oriana from like Knight. We saw a lot of E's into the enemy team on Jackie Love. We didn't get to see the full extent of this team. When the enemies underperform, I think that's when Jackie Love looks a lot worse than he usually is, because again, he usually plays more at a closer distance to the enemy team, trying to deal out as much DPS as he can, and then that kind of leads him in a situation where if his team is falling apart around him, it's easier to focus him down when he's in that close range, even with the ability to peel himself slightly with Ezreal. Like, it's unfortunate. I do think that this team all around is substantially more, like, I do think they're more talented than Suning. I think Suning is an incredibly talented team in and of themselves. They have what arguably, in my opinion, one of the best junglers in the world. They have one of a really good mid laner. I think he's a top 5 mid laner, top 4 mid laner inside of the LPL. They have an extremely talented new top laner who's absolutely getting mass amounts of solo kills at this Worlds right now. They have Jackie Love is really good too, but again, Yu Yanji seems to be the missing piece of this team. He seems to be the key integral part as to why they can't actually succeed on the international stage. If we see pretty much all the successful teams in the later stages of the series, of the tournament, anybody who succeeded had one of their key identifying pieces being a hyper-aggressive roaming support. If we look at Team Liquid's ability to turn it around in the later stages of the playoffs, we saw CoreJJ able to turn it, kind of make things happen on Pantheon and other things. We saw the group stages, and we saw inside of the mostly I would say in the quarterfinals We saw Sword Art actually be able to take over the series for the most part, and a few other things. If we saw inside of the G2 versus Damwon series, we saw Burial take over on Leona. We saw a lot of things. It's always led, usually for the most part, if it is an early game comp, is usually kind of decided by the support being a hyper aggressive player. But like honestly, Yanji doesn't really bring that to the table. He really has no. He doesn't have any laning abilities. He usually loses the lane pretty handily, even in winning matchups. And on top of that, I think he's one of the least. He's one of the more stationary supports out of all of the successful teams at Worlds, because he really just kind of stays in lane and loses it instead of roaming around. Like it's just kind of incredible to me. If you're a laning support, at least be good at the laning aspect of it. Like it's like only half of the game for supports. Like as it stands, supports are overtuned, and his inability to be able to roam around the map was really ineffective for top esports, and as to why they weren't able to play around the meta. I think Suning actually took advantage of a lot of situations. First off, I think that they were able to I think that a lot of the games, if we look at Karsa versus SOFM was up by like 40 CS and getting more ganks off. Like I think Karsa tried to focus more on ganks, but it wasn't able to do that. Like he just. Like I think one of the bigger differences obviously was in mid lane, obviously from an underpowered Mr. Knight, and I think in the jungle were the two biggest differences in the series, because we saw a pretty equalized 369 versus Bin for most of the series. We saw a pretty station like Huang Fong was dealing DPS, but again I think it was more so. I think the differences were more so inside of the mid side of the map. I think that. It's really disappointing, honestly. I don't think Karsa was terrible. I think there was a few situations, if we saw the flash Lee Sin kick out of a turret where he ended up dying. Lux just, I can't hear you. Yes, but
okay. So the thing with Lee Sin is that I think people are kind of confusing what are good Lee Sin players, because when Karsa and SWFM are piloting Lee Sin, it makes it look really, really strong. But when you saw other junglers do it, you're like, okay, if these guys get a Lee Sin pick, it's going to take over the game. You didn't see that in the Suning series. Karsa and Lee Sin are like bread and butter. That's like bottle and water. That's like literally his pick right there. And he was actually pretty far behind. Like he built Spirit Visage second. Like in it was game 2 actually. And Yuyanja in game 2, he was on the Leona. I saw barely any aggressive plays. That was the game where Jackie Love obviously flashed over and he died, and a lot of people were memeing about that. I think personally that specific game where they lost it and they were absolutely just in, because at some points in the series top were in control, but I guess you would chalk it up to nerves, because it wasn't like they were playing absolutely terrible where Suning just ran over them. Like Suning made a lot of mistakes, and it's to a certain point where if top have a better mentality on the day, I think top are in the finals. But obviously, that's not Suning's fault that top esports mentally implode. It's not their problem. But I think that from everything I heard, or just reading Reddit and places like that, Suning got a lot of chances to scrim against top esports. So maybe that gave them a little bit more of an edge, because they knew how to beat them, and top esports maybe showed too many strategies. Like, guys, we actually have talked about this.
I told anybody who scrims inside of the World Championships against the team you're about to play if that does that, the coach should instantaneously be fired, because that's one of the worst things you could possibly do. Like again, I guess technically if you're like trying to see if Bard mid works against Knight somehow, maybe, but for the most part, I think if you're playing a team, especially if you're the better team, if you're the one that is expected to be the upper hand, and you've had the upper hand all season, if you're scrimming them at the World Championships, I think that, especially when you're about to play them, I think that's extremely unintelligent. You show too many cards, they get used to your playstyle and all that stuff, and it really does hamper you. Like, I'm
played against top before, so it's not like they don't know anything though.
Yeah, but I mean, again, scrimming is just idiotic.
I mean, even with extra scrims, like they played top before.
Yeah. But again, top never had a handle on top before. But I think again, it comes down to the fact that Yuyanji and Sword Art playing incredible at this point in time. This is really a step up for them. This World Championship, they've really leveled up the play.
Played trash.
Who has?
Yuyanji, the support for top. I thought you played that garbage.
I didn't say Yuyanji. I said Sword Art and.
Yuyanji and Sword Art.
Did I say Yuyanji? Did I not say Huang Fong?
No, you're running it down.
Thank you so much. Like that, I did not. I don't. Huang Fong Yeah.
What was the last series where he was playing Karma and he could have
Yeah.
blocked?
I was literally just trash talking Yanji, and then I said his name. I assume that's why he popped in my head. Yeah, Huang Fong. Yeah, I think Huang Fong and Sword Art have really stepped up their level of play. I think that's been one of the biggest reasons as to why they've been able to succeed at this World Championship. If you look at the series between Suning and Top Esports during the regular season, if you look at that, the reason they were actually able to lose is because Karsa was able to develop, like, kind of put all of his attention towards top side. He consistently ganked them, and still at bot side was at a deficit. Like, even without jungle attention, they were still losing the lane pretty handily because of the fact that they were just getting outlaned. There's a lot more stationary acts from Sword Art. He's been a lot more mobile during this Worlds. I assume it's because of scrims and the way the meta's shifted. He's really gotten a handle of that. But it's been incredible in my opinion. I think a real transformation for this team. I think that even though I think they haven't really developed drastically throughout the entire tournament, I think that they kind of peaked during the end of group stages, but for the most part, they've looked really good. I think that SOFM 100% played well this series. Even in his J4 game, where I think that he was a little bit behind in terms of CS, I mean, that's obviously going to happen in terms of the Grays versus...
I didn't even care if he was behind in CS. You see how many plays that man was
Yeah, he
doing?
made a lot of plays. That's the whole thing about it.
It's not even just the plays, it's the outplays he was doing. And, like, he made J4 look like an actual carry champion. I was like, this is insane.
No, I love J4. I think J4 is an extremely fun champion. I think my big thing about it right now is the fact that, like, I think, again, I don't want to give, like, Suning, again, on a good day, and when Top Esports puts it together, they don't beat them, even with the better handle of the meta. But that doesn't really matter. I think that Top Esports all around has been playing worse at the World Championships than Suning has. I think that Suning has really mastered this meta, and I think they honestly were a better meta.
As the tournament goes on, like, we always have that team at Worlds every single year. If you count Season 1 Worlds, there's always that team that always what's that word? Ramps up as the event goes on. Suning were that team this year where they ramped up.
I don't think they've really 100%, like, again, I think that they've kind of peaked in the middle of this tournament and really stayed at that elevated play. But again, they're not at the top. I think that even though they're in the world in the finals, I think that there's like just a very large gap between them and first place. Even as much as they've ramped up, I just it's so drastic to me. It's such a drastic difference. But I think I really enjoy SOFM right now. I really do think he pushes the pace of this team and really has molded a solid identity. They're one of the best objective. They're kind of like, in my opinion, I think right now, if we could put, they're essentially like FlyQuest in terms of objective based and kind of hype, like early aggressiveness, but they're good at it. Like, they're actually a good team. It's like a high FlyQuest if all of the players weren't terrible.
Than that, I think their drafting phase is questionable. Like, certain picks they gave over, like certain picks they banned on blue and red side. I don't know if that'll be exploited by Damwon. I think Damwon are comfortable with whatever you give them personally. But we're talking about the finals later on. But overall for Top Esports, we're not going to see them until next year. Get rid of Yuyanja, get Mako, Main.
They wanted, if you heard about it, they tried to get PP God at the beginning of the season, but FPX didn't want to give it to them. PP God would have made this team competing for a championship 100%.
Oh, they'd probably be in the finals.
They would be in the finals 100%. I'm so sad.
You know what's really funny?
What?
Is that they almost got to the finals with Yuyanji.
I mean, yeah, that's just
people gotta factor this in. Even if Top did make it to the finals, if they won the series, they weren't gonna beat Damwon. Like, there were no shape to beat Damwon. They probably could just got absolutely railed.
I don't want to make things like I don't want to look back in retrospect and us railing on all these Chinese teams, and then we get to the finals and they get 3-0'd. But it'd be very surprising to me if that happened.
Like, right, so let's go on to G2 versus Damwon. This was so one-sided. Like, even if people want to say, "Oh yeah, they won game 1," guys, I love G2, but come on, like they got railed. Like, this is.
I do want to give credit to G2 this season. I think that I know individually a lot of them are playing worse. I think every single one of them is playing worse, but for the most part,
Mickey X was fine. Mickey X played great.
I mean, he had one bad game in game 3 where he died 700 times.
Like, Mickey X, Hillisang, and Core JJ were the best Western supports at the event, and Mickey X, he played amazing. Like, if he had, it's gonna sound kind of mean, if he had a real ADC, potentially they at least win more than one game.
I don't
But
think so. I think the big problem right now is the fact that if we look at it right now, Mickey X got figured out and his roams around game 2 were kind of similar. The pathing of them were similar
yeah,
inside of game 2 into game 3, and they were actually able to pick him up consistently. He didn't have the base resistances that Leona has, so he was like, him getting caught out was a lot more of a big deal. Like, and especially with the fact that Pantheon falls off a planet. Like, literally useful for the first 10 to 15 minutes, and then is just one of the least useful because most of his early game aggression comes from the fact that he can tower dive, and after that, you either build him with a black cleaver so he can kind of get the resistances shredded on a tank, or you build him full tank and he does no damage and he just has a point and click stun, and like just gets like that's pretty much all he does. Like there's not a lot Pantheon does once he gets behind, and they really did try and make it work. If we saw game 1 to game 2 transition, I really do think they adapted pretty well by taking the Leona themselves. Like, they had a lot of good picks into this team, and I really want to say that I think...
What do you feel about the Flex Lucian?
The Flex Lucian? In what game was that?
That was in game 1, in the draft phase, where they could have baited picking Lucian mid, but they flexed it to bot.
I don't think... Are you... Oh, yeah. I mean, I think... My big thing right now, I want to point out why I think Lucian is a terrible ADC. First of all, they buffed up the base resistances and base AD and a lot of the scale... And base AD and a lot of the early game carries, which actually, if you look at the even purely the solo queue rating, actually hampered, like the win rate of the scaling ADC shot up, and the win rates of the kind of aggressive lane bully ADC shot down because they got scaling instead. But again, if we look at it in the aspect, like not only that, again right now as it stands right now, the big thing about the most useful aspect of a team right now that comes into a team is obviously utility. That's why mage supports are just really not that useful. That's why we see a lot more Senna, and that's why we see a lot more Ashes, because utility right now, when you bring it to the table, there's a lot more damage getting brought around the map that you really don't need more DPS. Senna can deal with carries, tanks well enough. She doesn't have to burst them. Like, all around, your damage and your full-on team fighting is come from the fact that you're able to bring out a lot of utility from the bot side, from the support and the ADC. And Lucian doesn't bring any of that. He's just kind of a damaged carry that kind of falls off the planet toward the later half of the game in comparison to the rest of the characters. Like
Caitlyn, I think he just falls off at like 25 minutes if you're not substantially ahead.
What's up? Well, Caitlyn actually scales really well in the very late game because she has so much range. Where so is Lucian just doesn't do anything. He's short ranged and all he has is a lot of dashes and he has a lot of bursts. Again, if you can actually play really well, you can make him scale moderately well. But again, the reason that ADCs don't play kind of hyper-aggressive early game is because ADC is more so used for that third secondary source of like CC to kind of lead up to either like an Ornn long-ranged ADC and you have a little bit of damage on top of a Senna, or you have like a Caitlyn, a Ashe across the map, something to set it up, and then you have a lot of like DPS anyways. Like honestly, like it's like mid game. I think Lucian kind of gets outscaled. I think he's really good with his 2-item power. Like not even 2. He's really good with his no-item power spike. Starts once ADCs like Ashe get up to that Bork Hurricane. He kind of starts getting like outpaced in terms of just like everything he does. I think Lucian should never be picked in bot right now. I think until they kind of fix the station of the other lanes right now, and because right now the damage in team fights doesn't need to be sustained. There's not really anything they can do. Like even the tanks right now are bursty. Like there's really no reason to have high burst ADC right now. It's not necessary.
For me, what G2 did was wrong was that, there's a lot, but like on the surface level, so most people who are new to League right now probably just watch this Worlds as their first event. G2 played wrong in a lot of ways where, you have the early game aggressive picks and Renekton game 1, you have Lillian, Silas, Lucian, and Rakan, and getting Rakan this Worlds is literally, if you blind Rakan, most teams who blind Rakan actually won. Fun fact, actually, about this World Championship. And G2 had all the aggressive picks, and none of their aggressive picks nor their lane movement actually worked at all. Then you also saw the reason why people questioned Perkz being ADC. All the reasons why people questioned Perkz last year didn't apply because he actually overperformed to the expectations that was set upon him. And this year, it clearly does show why the problems with Perks being ADC is a thing, because when you face somebody who is just not only better than you mechanically at playing ADC, you can see why he would be a liability. So I think going into the off season, if they want to replace Perks and get him out of the bot lane and potentially have international success, I think you have to do that. I think this series shows why you just can't win with Perks ADC. He had a good run in 2019 where you almost did it, but I just think it's not worth it. Now, Damwon are probably not going to play the comp they ran in Game 2. I remember in Game 2 they ran that Fiora that went like 0-10 or some shit. I was like, all right, okay, you guys are trolling here. Please stop doing this. Please stop doing this to ourselves. And they still kind of made the game look decently competitive, but you guys could tell like they were still firmly in control over the series. So for me, I think that G2 have to kind of I don't know, honestly. Like I've gotten questions about this in the comment section because I would personally keep Caps. That's me. If you're gonna ask me, I would keep Caps. Perks could go to another team and play mid lane, but if you want to have a shot at winning internationally, or maybe next year you want to go to the MSI that they would hopefully have, and you want a shot at winning that MSI next year since they're already out of this world, the 2020 World Championship, you have to keep Perks, but you want to have them for the shot calling, but you want to have Caps because he's just a better laner overall. But Perks is smarter at the game. It's just a big old mess right now. But I think that they're going to have to understand. You could kind of see like G2's tricks weren't working on Damwon, like the hidden cheese ganks that Jankos always tries to do. Jankos actually played pretty poorly this World Championship. I think everyone except for pretty much Mickey X and Wonder had some questionable games, but I think he was overall fine. He wasn't stand out like he normally is. I think Mickey X was their best player, but that's not going to carry you when you have junglers like Kangen and SOFM just running people down. So that's pretty much it for me. And G2 versus Damwon, I was really, really disgusted to watch. Game two was like, all right, you guys are done. You guys are actually finished.
I mean, they won Game 2.
No. Sorry, Game 3. Game 3 was like, all right, you guys are finished.
See,
go home.
the big thing about Game 3 was like they kind of had the pace. They set the pace again. The way you beat Damwon is obviously early game skirmishes. They set the pace. They're like, we're gonna gank bot. They get a kill. You know what they do? They just dive bot and just get everybody killed because Mickey X had the worst game of his life. Mickey X poorly tower dove. Mickey X got caught out a lot. And Perks just was terrible the entire series. He was probably the worst player in that entire series.
First in Game 3, if you guys
Not
go
even
back
probably.
at 22 minutes, he literally flashed under the turret.
I think he did it 3 times that series, and one of the times he got a kill, and it kind of...
Yeah, he flashed under the turret, traded with Ghost, and it didn't matter.
No, that was... He traded with him in mid lane. He died to Ghost twice in lane, though.
Yeah,
it's
all the reasons why you didn't want Perks ADC showed in this series. Like, it just... oh my god, this was... complete stop, and everybody knows they lost in the fastest game in world's history. I mean, that wasn't not predictable if you watched the whole series beforehand, Like, they're playing really, really bad. But do you think this is overall G2's level? Because I don't think that this is overall G2's level. I think that this meta wasn't really for them, and you had...
I'll point out, I think a big problem right now is that it is I don't know. Like, it's a big thing right now. I think bot lane is really important right now. I think that Wonder being unable to play against pretty much Nuguri was a big problem too. He played moderately well for the most part, but again, he really doesn't have... He's not as good as a strong side top laner, and he's not even that good, even better at a weak side top laner, to be honest. Like, I think the difference in pretty much every lane was the big problem with this. And on top of the fact, they came in with a worse idea of how to play the game. Like, again... I think that everybody understood it. Like, Damwon, when they pick a comp, they are going to play the exact same way, and there's really nothing you can do about it. They're going to play...
Because the World's 2020 is all about playing around your jungler and how your jungler sets you up. They didn't play around Jankos at all.
Jankos didn't play around anybody because he literally... No, Jankos... Jankos was my least favorite player. Pretty much all Worlds. Like, besides Perks, who's been pretty underwhelming for the entire tournament, Jankos has been the second worst. Like, obviously...
At least he tried to make stuff happen.
I mean, you could say... I'm not going to give him slack. The reason they weren't able to get first place is because first place in their group is because of the fact that the difference between, honestly, like, him and, honestly... He was the third best jungler in that group. He was worse than Gemini. I mean, he was worse than SOFM. And he was better than Broxa. Congrats. I mean, they beat him there. But I mean, I think that Jankos made a lot of poor decisions. I like, first of all, he kind of transitioned into a purely ganking jungler, and again, with the changes inside of this season, with Ketchup XP being nerfed, if you gank and either don't get a lot of resources in terms of XP from lane, or you don't get a lot of or you don't get a kill or anything, you actually lose out on a lot of not only farm but a lot of XP. Because again, you can't really use that catch-up. They did buff it up a little bit more, but like 25% back. But again, for the most part, catch-up XP is completely negligible at this point in time. So if you don't get a considerable turnout in either the side lanes or just like in like just purely like instantaneous returns for you, you're gonna not be able to duel the enemy jungler anymore. And I think that that's really counteracted, like in my opinion, Jankos' playstyle, because if we look at the past 2 seasons with G2's like success, they've been able to just constantly like spam gank, and that was pretty much all of Jankos' stuff. You don't really have to think meticulously about ganking if you're just able to do it every 3 seconds, and I think that was the big thing.
Spam ganking, it was more like you could tell their map movements. Like when Jankos was ready for a gank, Caps would move up closer. He would shove his mid laner in when he had priority. And
are you trying to tell me they didn't spam gank last year and the year before that? Because I won't agree with that.
They did, but at least it was calculated to a certain extent.
No one's saying anything's not calculated. That's how you play League.
I mean, like this year, look at they're just throwing shit at them.
Well, no, it's the reason that first of all, a lot of mistimed ganks, and I think the mechanics purely on Jankos. But at the same time, he really did not adapt to this meta. He really did not transition his playstyle into this season.
This should be his meta.
It's right? Not. It's no pure massive ganking meta, and not massive ganking meta. It is like, again, you have to balance ganking and what's it called. And Jankos did not adapt from that previous meta. He just purely ganked, and he'd fall behind drastically against junglers who just took advantage of that. If he didn't get a successful gank off, or even if he did, he still was behind the enemy jungler. Like,
oh yeah, you're right. Mickey X was having the worst series of his life. If you guys go back and watch Game 4, there's a point where he's on Nautilus. He's level 4. He walks up to try and contest Dragon that's literally already taken, and then they just catch him out. Like he was, so bad. It feels so bad because I don't want to rag on him because he was the best player.
He was the best player for most of this world, so there's really not much you could like in the group stages. Like when he was playing like Core JJ, that was Core JJ was my favorite matchup. That was like a clash of 2 mega supports. I mean, I still think Core JJ was one of the best players at Worlds. Like as much as I know people like to think that's an exaggeration. I think that he just genuinely almost outcarried everybody else in the entire group. Like he almost put the entire team on his back and carried them out of groups, but wasn't enough. I mean, I think that
Rock was so heavy.
They're all so heavy, man.
Well, that's why Jensen requested a stronger jungler.
I'm so excited for Alfari, man.
Oh my god. But hey, that's pretty much it, guys. The finals will take place later on tonight. Yeah, so you guys will get a chance to watch this video, get a little bit of some Worlds hype going in. I'll be asleep when the matches play. I'm gonna stay on social media all day till I get home, do the highlights, reactions, and then we'll do thoughts and opinions on the finals. But that's pretty much it. Overall, to kind of quickly go over the finals, Damwon are gonna destroy these guys, man. Like, I think Suning might win a game. It'll be that first game where it's like, oh yeah, I didn't think they could do this, and then the rest of the games might just be complete stomps. Other than that scenario, I think Damwon just come out swinging. SOFM would literally have to play like he did on Jarvan to get them their game 1 win, and that game 1 win they might get against Damwon might give them the confidence they need to actually bring it to 5 games. If they could get, if Suning can get the 1 game win that I think they can, potentially in game 1 or 2, that might give them the confidence they think in order to actually win the series. But other than that, I think every single player on Damwon completely not blows out, but they can match all the counterparts on Suning. And I don't really think Suning's players play well together as a team better than Damwon, but they do play well as a team, good in 5v5s. Now, if SOFM, I think there should be must bans on him in terms of Lee Sin or Kindred.
I think Graves is the number 1 ban.
Depending on what side you're on, go for Graves first. Other than that, if you can't ban that out, take out Kindred, because he's effective on literally anything and everything, which is goddamn insane. And the fact that he showed Jarvan puts another champion in there where it's like he's just going to be another thing in draft you have to consider. But other than that, yeah, is there anything you want to say?
But I got nothing else. I'm pretty excited for tonight, but not gonna look too good probably.
Yeah, this is the last series of the year after this horrible, horrible year. So if you guys stood with League this whole year, God bless you, because my watching North America play on the online half of the spring online and then doing it for summer that was a doozy, man. That was a doozy. Oh my god. But that's pretty much it. See you guys later. Like, comment, subscribe, also well enjoy on the Nightwing and Wave Life Esports. Signing out, guys. Peace.
Hi there, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more stuff.
Yeah, thank you.